And welcome everyone. We should be live. I'm just gonna give it a minute until I can see that you are indeed in the chat. Let me know in the chat that you can hear me properly. And welcome Mitzi, welcome everyone that just joined. We've got about 10 minutes before to start. If any of you are watching the replay in the next few weeks or months, if you wanted to go straight into the walking tour, you can skip the next 10 minutes. We'll be right here waiting for everyone to connect. Let us know in the chat where you're tuning from and everything. We still have time to get to know each other. We've got 10 minutes before to officially kick off. And you might see some headstones behind me. I am in Chiswick Old Cemetery. And it is nearly 8 p.m. UK time, so we'll have a bit of sunset eventually by the river. Hi Sandy, welcome. You can hear me fine, perfect. Some of you know the drill already. You might be able to hear a flight. We are in the middle of the pathway to go down to Heathrow Airport. Hi Cindy, welcome. Thanks Cindy. It took forever to let it grow, so it was looking horrible for 6 months, but finally I've been able to cut off all the colored hair. And welcome CNC, I didn't see you, but nice to see you here. Right, I'm gonna tap the microphone. You know the drill, I'm gonna tap the microphone 3 times. You let me know in the chat whether you've heard it. You should have been able to hear a triple tap. Because it's a bit windy today, we don't want the cable to get disconnected, so let me know if you've heard a triple tap. If at any point through the tour you start hearing some funny noises or wind or anything, let me know. Hi Mark, nice to see you here. And welcome Cheryl. Gin and tonic time, oh I wish. There's another aircraft. There is an app that you can download on your phone and you scan the flight, and with your geolocation they tell you where they're coming from and where they're landing. Well, here they're landing into Heathrow, that's for sure, but I've never downloaded it, but I think it could be quite fun. And Pisas is here. Welcome Pisas. We will finish by the Hammersmith Bridge. Yes, we won't cross it today, because I'm planning to do another tour where we'll do Barnes to Hammersmith. So we'll actually finish down there. We're not gonna go into Hammersmith downtown today because I'll keep that for next time. Because there's a murder house in Bath just across from the bridge. And you also have the Harrods warehouse and everything, so we can go and see that next time. Right, let's see what time it is. It is 5 minutes to go, guys. 5 minutes before we officially kick off. So you still have time to go and grab yourself a gin and tonic, or a tea, or biscuits, or whatever you might fancy. If any of you were completely new to me, make sure you say hello in the chat. It's always great to see a few newbies. And Linda is here. Welcome, Linda. Welcome to Chiswick in West London. And another aircraft, let me show you. I've been sat here for like an hour. I've had quite a few going right above my head. Some a bit higher, some a bit lower, but they're all going down to Heathrow. I'd like to go on a flight. I've not been anywhere since, well, June, not that long ago. Hi, Emily and Carol, nice to see you here. great to hear, Linda. And welcome, Herbie. Nice to see you here as well. So we still have about 4 minutes to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. So, and another one. Hi, Nikki. Hi, Lee. Nice to see you here. Oh, you see them from your backyard as well in Detroit, yeah. Well, you know what? Even from where I live in Camberwell, I see a lot of flights going on top of me. They're probably going to Heathrow as well. Once, actually, I was flying towards Heathrow, and I was sat by the big screen at the, you know, the kind of like the front seat, and the camera was facing the ground, which is quite rare. We rarely have those ground cameras, and I could see everything. I could see London Bridge area and Southwark, so that was literally my borough. And 5 minutes later, we were landed, so it's very quick. The other day I didn't show you big. You know the day we went by Tower Bridge? That day there was some kind of an outside promotional exhibition, whatever. They now do those tiny little taxi plane. I mean, they're like mini aircraft that take you down from central London to Heathrow in, I think I read 8 minutes. Is that too short? I don't know, but I don't know how much it cost. I mean, it's probably thousands, but now you can fly to Heathrow from central London in a mini. They look like a cross between let me show you this one again. A cross between you know, like Budgie the little helicopter, something like that. But it's actually a new air taxi system that they're trying to promote. But the day we did that tour, they had already removed it, I think, in the evening. Hi, honey, welcome. Right, let me gracefully stand up because I think we've got 2 minutes now. I probably don't really need to check the bell to check the clock too much, because we should hear the bell of the church down there. It is gonna be the bell of St. Nicholas Church. Let me show you the church. It's just down here behind the trees. Oh yes, we could see a few foxes in the cemetery. And another aircraft. It doesn't stop. Hi Wendy, nice to see you here. So we still have 2 minutes to go. 2 minutes before we officially kick off. Oh, this one seems a bit closer. I could almost read the maybe Qatar Airline or something orange or brown. I rarely fly from Heathrow because usually the flights are the most expensive ones. I often end up in Stansted. Ah, I can hear the bell, so it's time to go. Welcome guys, welcome to Chiswick. And we thought, is it 20:04? Oh no, it's 20, on my clock it's 20, so 8 p.m. right now. Anyway, let's go. Let's flip this camera around and let's go. So we are in Chiswick Old Cemetery. We're actually gonna leave the cemetery to go into a graveyard. A lot of people don't realize that there is a difference, but there is a little difference between cemeteries and graveyards. Cemeteries are purpose-built commercial burial grounds, when the graveyards were those little graveyards surrounding a church. Sometimes you'd have a chapel in a cemetery as well, but that's not a place of regular worship every Sunday. It's just for the funerals. So here is a graveyard, and right down there is a cemetery. Usually they're not right next to one another, but here in Chiswick they are. Why not? So the headstones in the graveyard are usually a bit older. because my regulars, you would know that in Victorian times, those little graveyards were often completely saturated. You know, with the Industrial Revolution, when London grew quite dramatically, those graveyards were completely saturated. They started to become a bit smelly. Ladies didn't want to go to the graveyards anymore, and eventually they had to find a solution, and they opened those large garden cemeteries on the what would have been at the time the outskirts of the city. Although here we're not too far from the outskirts of the city. You can just, because we've got the Hammersmith flyover, it's a big road. Actually, just down the left-hand side here, there's Hogarth House and stuff, but I cannot go and show you because it's so noisy. Hogarth roundabout is allegedly the busiest in Europe. I don't know if that's true, but there's a lot of traffic, so it's not very nice. Ooh, we've got some nice roses down there. Anyway, just so you know, I'm just gonna lower the sound of my voice for about 2 minutes, because there's a local lady here in the building just in front of us that likes it to be quiet. She once shouted at me, so we're gonna keep it quiet as she wishes. Although I'm gonna do 10 meters and then I'll start talking again, because there's only so much you can control the noise of a street. And welcome everyone that just joined. Now, Chiswick, it's amazing. It's got a little villagey atmosphere, because at the time it was a village outside of London. We are, to give you an idea, about 6 miles 6 miles from Charing Cross. And this is an old pub, the Old Burlington. It was founded in the 15th century. It closed in the 1920s, I think. Now it's a private accommodation. It is said that it is in here that the famous highwayman Dick Turpin had his marriage breakfast, or wedding breakfast, whatever you call it. I didn't even know what it was when I first did the first research for that tour. I was like, what is a wedding breakfast? I thought that was maybe to celebrate the morning after your first night of love or something, but no, it's just a wedding ceremony. It's a weird way to say it, if you ask me. Anyway, let me show you another former pub. Oh, you know what? There is a ghost in the Old Burlington. It is said to be a tall ghost that moves the picture frames around. But I don't know if they have any contendant for the ghost. We were talking, you don't see much from here. We don't want to go because it's noisy, but that's actually the Hammersmith flyover down there. So that's the road you take to go down to Heathrow. Anyway, this beautiful building here, the little pink one, that was also a pub called the Lamb. It closed down in 1909. It used to be supplied by the Lamb brewery that was just next door. That was a competitor of the Fuller's Brewery. The Fuller's Brewery is very much still alive. They do some tours and stuff. The Fuller's is just on the other side down there. The Fullers, they produce, for example, the London Pride and some very popular beers. But the Lamb Brewery, I don't think it exists anymore, the Lamb Brewery. And in that little pub, so the pink one, that is where at the beginning of 1889, they had the inquest into the death of a young man called Montagu John Druitt. Montagu died clearly by his own hand. He was found into the river. You might have heard about him because he was a Jack the Ripper suspect, and quite a good one, if you ask me. But we'll talk about Monty in a few minutes. For now, let's go into the graveyard of St. Nicholas Church. So St. Nicholas, he was of course known for being Santa Claus. He was also the saint patron of sailors, children, and prostitutes. And this church is actually very old. It's been partially rebuilt, and a lot of what we see today is Victorian. The church tower, I think it's 15th century, but it dates back. We've had a church on this site since the 7th century, apparently. And in the churchyard, you have a few famous people that have been buried, including a famous mistress of Charles II, Barbara Villiers. We'll talk about her in more details in a little while. You also have two daughters of Oliver Cromwell. And inside of the church, there was a little, kind of like a little crypt that they've only discovered many years later. And in there they found a little coffin that looked, it was very weirdly shaped. Not like a child coffin, like a coffin for a body with no head. Now, we have a very infamous body that has no head. It is the body of Oliver Cromwell. Some of you might know Oliver had first been buried like a king because he was the Lord Protector of England. But when Charles II came back to the throne, to reclaim his crown, he was outraged that Oliver Cromwell, the one that had his dad beheaded, was buried like a king. So he had the body exhumed. Oh, someone they had a bit of a party or something here. I can see some confettis on the floor. I wonder what they celebrated. Oh, thanks, Christopher. That's very much appreciated. All your tips are very much appreciated. So yeah, Oliver Cromwell, he was exhumed and then he was beheaded. He was already dead 2 years earlier, but he was beheaded. We know exactly what happened to his head. But you know what? That's a story for another day. Some of you might remember the 300 years of Oliver Cromwell's, the 300 years story, I meant to say, because his body was placed in front of the Parliament and eventually his head fell down. So we know what happened to the head. I'll tell you again once we go back to Holborn. But we don't know what happened to the body. Some believe it's been buried here in the church, and that was exactly why the coffin was weirdly shaped. Who knows? There are quite a few suspicions on different places where he might be buried. Now look at this skull. That is a nice example of what we call memento mori. Memento mori, there was a practice of having some skulls on bones, on headstones. This guy might have been a stonemason. That's probably why he could afford to have such a beautiful monument. I don't know that for sure. It's a girl I met in the cemetery last time that told me, so I don't see why she would be lying, but who knows. Yeah, this type of memento mori, that was to remind you of your own mortality. Because at the time, they had very little understanding of diseases. So you could be dead from one day to the next, still today, but it might be a bit less frequent today. So it was to remind you that one day you'd be dead, one day you'd be judged. So that's quite typical. Well, they've had it for quite a few centuries, but especially in the 18th century, they did a lot of those skulls. Hi, Natalie. It looks haunted. Well, you know what? It probably is. I have to be careful where I step because, look, you've got some little holes. I don't want to be falling into a grave. Now, let me show you the monument of the most famous person buried here. It is Hogarth. Hogarth, the painter. Hogarth was a painter, but he was a great illustrator as well. He was like a chronicler of his times. And he's buried here because he had a summer house here in Chiswick. I don't know why anyone buys a summer house 6 miles from your winter house, but at the time they did that. He's also got a little statue on the other side. Let me show you him on his dog. And this is an engraving of his house. Again, the house is just around the corner, but we can't really go because it's so noisy. You'd have to cross the Hammersmith flyover and roundabout and everything. You can visit the house. I've never been, but one day I'll go. And welcome, Marilyn. Now, Hogarth is also known for the copyright laws. You know, when he was doing his engravings, especially the, you know, at the time in the 18th century, there started to be a great interest into the lives of the sex workers. You know, we are at the time when Covent Garden was full of them, and people started to care and to wonder how those young girls ended up in that trade. And Hogarth did what he called the Harlot Progress. It was a series of engravings telling the life of a young girl that ended up in prostitution. But Hogarth was infuriated because he had done about 1,000 copies, and people would copy him and sell it, and they would make a lot of money with his illustrations. And eventually he complained to Parliament, and in 1735 they did the well, it was called the Engravers Act, but everyone called it the Hogarth Laws. They were basically our first laws into copyright. Hi, East V1Y. Nice to see you here. Let us know where you're tuning from. It's always nice to see a few newbies. Now, before we go much further, let me show you a little plaque. Some of you might remember the very first time I did this tour. It was not on YouTube yet. I was completely flooded. I had to walk in like maybe 2 feet of water. Well, apparently it's not. It wasn't the first time. So that's the line of the flooding of 1928. It's quite frequently flooded around here. The river can overflow. That's why I don't understand why those houses by the river, they cost millions of pounds, yet they are built on flooding grounds. I mean, one of them I'll show you later, and it sold for 18 million a couple of years ago, so it's probably even more now. Anyway, let me show you the river for a sec. Now, sadly, we had a young man that was found about here in the river. He was found on 31st, I think, of December 1888. Although his body probably would have been in the water since December the 4th. His name was Montague John Druitt. He would have taken his own life only a few weeks after Mary Jane Kelly's murder, you know, on the 9th of November. That was the last of the canonical 5. Oh, some people are they fishing? Yeah, I don't know if, they might just be mudlarking. The tide is quite low right now, so you see people searching in the mud. Oh, actually, I don't know if they're fishing or mudlarking, because for mudlarking you need a license, so I don't know whether you can go with your kids like that. Anyway, this is the river, and you can see it's low tide. That's an 8. An 8 is a little island. It spells Ayot, but it's pronounced 8. When the tide is out, you can go down to the island. When the tide is in, you'd have to swim to the island if you want to go. It's a little nature reserve. You are allowed to go, but there's not much on the island itself. Now, Montague, he was a young lawyer. His mother suffered from mental health issues. When his body was found, he had a lot of money in his pockets, actually, and a lot of rocks. So that's why we know it's not an accident. He was actually a good swimmer. He had placed some rocks in his pockets to make sure he would not survive. Mudlarking or looking for clams? No, I would say mudlarking, looking for items. You know, London is quite old. You can still find some Roman potteries or coins, or sometimes I am amazed by those mudlarkers because, you know, when they find a piece of rusty metal, then they go like, oh yeah, that's a hairpin from the 16th century. And I'm like, how do you know? They have a club on a Saturday, they meet at the London Museum, and they kind of show each other their finds, and they help each other identify the items they found. One of my colleagues actually, she runs mudlarking tours. I'd like to try one day. Anyway, back to Druitt. He became a suspect post-mortem. You know, when he was alive, there was nothing against him. If anything, he had a famous uncle. His uncle John Druitt was a doctor, and he was a very famous doctor because he he claimed that a glass of alcohol a day would be beneficial to your health. So of course he was commissioned by many alcohol companies, so he was always in the newspapers. Even after he died, some newspapers would still say, Dr. Druitt recommended this and that. So it was a famous name. So I'm not saying that happened, but if, let's say, Monty was found in the streets of Whitechapel with something a bit compromising or just looking a bit dodgy, even just his name could have kind of saved him, because he would have been the nephew of such a famous doctor, Surely he couldn't be the type of guy committing such atrocities, surely. So he had a famous uncle, and he also had a cousin, Charles Druitt, that was a Church of England priest. Now that's interesting because 10 years later, there's another priest, I think he was from up north. He claimed that there was a young man that had died 10 years earlier, and he had confessed of being the Ripper, but he had confessed under confession. So obviously that could be rubbish, but it could be rubbish. I mean, anyone can lie, even a priest. But could it be that it was actually Druitt's cousin that did not want to obviously break the confession and did not want to tell the authorities about the guilt of his cousin, but that he felt really bad because he did not want anyone else to be accused and anyone else to be hanged. There's someone doing you probably won't see that far on camera, but there's someone rowing on the river down there. Those beautiful homes, they have the garden across the street. And they all have some beautiful gardens, but you know what? I was here earlier this afternoon. It's a Sunday, it's a sunny day. No one was enjoying their gardens. I didn't see any single garden being busy. That's a shame. Anyway, back to, well, you know what? Before we get back to Druitt, let me show you side house. The building, it's been rented, the full, so that full building, that's side house. It was rented by the BBC for the show The Apprentice, the first season, the UK one, because I think there's a US version as well. And would you believe the landlord claimed, so it was £5,000 a week for the house, and he claimed that the BBC contestants and everything, they did £12,000 of damage inside. Apparently they had a barbecue indoors and there was a little fire and you had red wine on the carpets and everything. So £12,000 of damage. I don't even know how you can manage that. Anyway, back to Druitt. Some people even claim that at the beginning of the 20th century, it seemed like the Jack the Ripper case had been closed. That everyone was convinced that it was a young doctor that had taken his own life. I was talking crap. I can see some people enjoying their gardens. Look, I'm gonna give you a little sneaky peek. So at least we've got 2 people enjoying their gardens. So that's nice. They probably want to see the sunset. Anyway, back to Druitt. They said a young doctor. He wasn't a doctor, he was a lawyer, but people could have been confused because he had a bit of a training as a doctor as well, and his uncle was a famous doctor. And he was a lawyer and also a teacher. He was teaching in a school in Blackheath. He lived in Blackheath in South London, and he had just been fired from his job. That's why he had a lot of money in his pocket. He had just been sacked. We don't know why. People have speculated that it might have been because he had an affair with a young man, a young student. It was a school for boys, but honestly, that's just pure speculation. We don't know why he was fired. And is it because he was fired that he decided to take his own life? It's possible, but he was also a lawyer and he had just won a case. So some people claim that he had some very strong mental health issues, and that's absolutely possible. But he would have been still able to function because the week before he had won a big case. So he was good at his job, you know, as a lawyer. Now, there's also a story, I'm not sure what the sources are for that, but some claim that his family suspected him of being the Ripper, and they had tried to get him out of London, so mid-November. They sent him to a famous asylum in France. We were talking about the brewery earlier, that's part of the Fuller's Brewery. And they sent him to an asylum in France, and apparently, as he was in the middle of a crisis at the asylum, he confessed to being the Ripper. Bad luck for him, the little nurse, she spoke English, so he was kicked out. Again, that I don't know what the sources are for that. It's probably one article somewhere. It's not been verified, but you know, it is possible. Now, the very reason why he's such a good suspect is that Sir Melvin Macnaghten, the CID of the police at the time, when he wrote his memoirs, he only stated that there were 3 main suspects, and the main one was a young doctor that had taken his own life, and that he had died shortly after the 5th murder. Now, Macnaghten was actually a friend of one MP in West Dorset. There was an MP in West Dorset, what a coincidence, where Druitt is from, that claimed that Jack the Ripper was a young man that took his own life. And it is very possible that the MP was a big friend of the Druitt family, so he wanted to pass on the message that Jack the Ripper was dead, but he did not want to name and shame the Druitt family. There was no point because he was dead anyway. It is very possible. Again, it's only speculations. I mean, my doubts on Druitt is that he had no connections to Whitechapel whatsoever. He was a young man from Dorset. He lived in Blackheath. He would come back down to Dorset to play cricket. He was a great cricketer. He doesn't have any alibis, although there are some close calls. The murder of Annie Chapman, a few hours later, he was playing cricket in Dorset. It's not impossible, but you know, who goes home after killing somebody, washes his hand and jumped on a train to Dorset to play cricket? It is possible. He doesn't have any alibis. But most ripologists would tell you that Jack the Ripper knew the East End like the back of his hand. Again, Blackheath is not far from the East End, and he would have commuted to work via Cannon Street. That's less than a mile from Merton Square. So it is possible, but he did not live in the East End. He had given to charity, though. An old friend of his from Winchester was running a charity, and he had given some money to that, a charity that was helping the East End. So, you know, maybe he did care. His uncle, the famous doctor, he hated prostitutes. He believed that they were responsible for all the problem, all the health issues. He had actually written a book about how guilty they were. And some claim, this is a bit far-fetched, but why not? Some people even claim that Montagu was an activist, that he cared for those poor people of the East End and the condition in which they lived, and that he actually sacrificed those 5 ladies to highlight the poverty of the East End. Now, if that was the case, well done, because that worked. I mean, clearly that worked. And some say that, you know, those ladies were already condemned. Elizabeth Stride, she suffered from the late stages of syphilis. Annie Chapman, she suffered from tuberculosis. So they would have been dead in a few months or in a few years anyway. If really there was a kind of like a terror activist, honestly, well done. I don't think someone with mental health issues could be that... But maybe. I mean, we do know he had some mental health issues because there was a note in his pocket that said, "I was afraid to end up like Mummy." His mother had been taken into an asylum here in Chiswick, although she was not here at the time when he died. We don't even know why he came to Chiswick. because he had a train ticket from Blackheath down to Hammersmith. So that's how we kind of know which day he died. But we don't know why he came here. Did he want to check himself into an asylum? That's very possible. The Manor House, Chiswick Manor House asylum was run by a friend of the family, I think. And maybe did he lose his nerves? Because the police was closing in on all the asylums in London. They believed at that point that Jack the Ripper was hidden in one of them. So, maybe did he plan to check himself into an asylum and then decided to jump off the bridge instead? Who knows? We'll never know. For me, he's a decent suspect only because we know that MacNaughton had some reasons to believe. And let's not forget that at the time, the main suspect for the police probably would have been Tumblety, which is my favorite suspect. I know some people talk about Kosminski, but there was some misunderstanding about that because some people at the time believed that Kosminski had died in an asylum, but he actually died many years later after the First World War in an asylum. So we know that Druitt, if indeed he was the Ripper, that would explain why the murder stopped. If you think they stopped. Because really, why do we talk about the 5 canonical ones? It's because of the CID, MacNaughton, that assumed it was the last one. Because we had a few copycats or a few more. Really, we had 12 in total. Why did we stop in the in November the 9th? It's probably because MacNaughton was convinced. So anyway, he's a good suspect. Let me show you his picture before we move on. Where is Druitt? There he is. That's Monty. Now, this building here, Walpole House, that is the one that sold for 18 million. Walpole, it's named after the nephew of Sir Robert Walpole, the first Prime Minister. And it is on a house on this site that we had a lady that lived, Barbara Villiers. She was one of the many mistresses of Charles II. She was a very sassy lady. She was often accused of doing group don't go anywhere. We'll be back soon. Perfect. According to the app, we are back. I'm just going to give it a minute before to say anything too interesting to make sure that you can hear me. Now, I was telling you that on a house on this site, there was a lady that lived, Barbara Villiers. Villiers, same name as the first Duke of Buckingham, George Villiers, the one that was probably having an affair with James I, so same family. Barbara Villiers she was known to be very sassy. She was often accused of having group sex. She even was having an affair with the Duke of Marlborough. The Duke of Marlborough was a great military commander. He's the... Kandian, thank you. I think we're back now. If you don't mind, would you tell me what is the last thing in the chat that you've heard properly? And then I'll just go back into what we were saying. Now, this bit here is going to be very pretty. Chiswick really feels like a village. It's called Chiswick because we used to have a cheese fair. It's not happened in many, many years, but that's how they got the name from. Oh, the Duke of Marlborough. Okay, cool. So yeah, Barbara Villiers, the mistress of Charles II, she was also having an affair with the Duke of Marlborough. So the Duke of Marlborough was married to Sarah Churchill, and Sarah Churchill was having an affair with Queen Anne. So that was quite sexy at the time. And Barbara Villiers, she had 5 children with Charles II. But anytime she was pregnant, she would say it was the son of the king. Charles admitted 5 of them, but there's one Charles Fitzroy. Even Charles was like, no, I don't think it's mine. When you have someone called Fitzroy, it's usually a bastard. Apologies for the term, but that's what they would have been called at the time. So an illegitimate Fitzroy, son of a king. Roy is of course Latin or Spanish for king. So if you know anyone called Fitzroy, they're probably the descendant of a bastard somewhere. Anyway, this is a beautiful little car. They use it for display for the cafe. They usually open the motor, and that's where they put all the fruit and vegetables. They have a little Italian cafe here with some amazing desserts and stuff like that. And so Barbara Villiers, she lived down here, and she died as a bit of a recluse. She had lost her good looks. She had put on a lot of weight, and she died out of dropsy. You know, her body was accumulating water. And before we go much further, let me show you a stink pipe. See this big kind of tube? That's what we call a stink pipe. Because at the time of the Victorian sewer, you know, when you have a lot of human poo that can ferment and you have some smells, they have to come out. They have to come out anyway, because otherwise you can have some explosions. So that's one of the remaining stink pipes. Would you believe there are some collectors? There are some websites online, people that collect all the stink pipes they see anywhere. And I'm always amazed when I find one myself. But yeah. The remains of the Victorian underground sewer, I mean. Now, I didn't show you earlier because that's when the signal dropped, but we had a little letterbox with no royal cipher. My regulars, you would know that every time you see a post box, there's a little, kind of like a little engraving or little 3D of the royal cipher. So that's the initials of the monarch. So let's see on this one if they have a royal cipher. And I'm sure they do. Right, so let's see. Ta-da! So it's a calligraphy that's quite interesting, but that's ER. But it's not Elizabeth Regina because it's the 7th. We've not had 7 Elizabeths, have we? It is Edward the 7th. So that's Queen Victoria's son. The postbox is not very straight, as you can see, but that's from the beginning of the 20th century. Now, we are actually gonna move from Chiswick to Hammersmith as we go past this beautiful terrace building. They have an amazing view on the other side because they're basically just facing the river. And that's quite typical of Georgian architecture. I love how they've got the numbers written with the Roman numbers down here. We can say they are Georgians because there are a few things that are typical of the Georgian period. Very often, it's not always the case, but sometimes when you have, a little window above the door like this, it's often Georgian. Now you also have those boots scrappers. See, if you came down from your horse on a muddy ground, you can come and clean your shoes like this. So that's often Georgian buildings as well. From New York City you are. Oh yeah, you've got some in Manhattan. Oh, that's cool, the Black Sun. I want to go to New York one day. I've never been. Now, we've got a few blue plaques down here. This is Sir Alan Herbert. He was an author, but he was also a politician. He's famous for having had influenced the newly written divorce laws. At the time, divorce was quite new, really. And he's also quite famous for popularizing the game of Skittles. Now, let me show you a picture of Skittles. Don't ask me to explain the game, it's way too British for me. But that's a pub game that was quite popular. The sound is back. Good. I hope it's been back for a while. Now, we've got 2 more blue plaques down here, 2 interesting characters. And one is going to be right here. Oh, there's a little chihuahua down here. Look at him. Hello. He's just too big to come through to come and say hello, but cute. Actually, let's see if we can see him a bit closer. Hello. No. He doesn't like the cameras anymore. Now, let me show you the second person I wanted to show you. Sir Emery Walker. He was a typographer, and he had, with his mate, I'll show you where the mate lived a bit further down, they had created a font called the Dove Press. After the pub, we'll see the pub down there. So there was a font that was particularly popular, and they actually were fighting with him and his mate, the two that created it, about the legacy, you know, who would get the rights after they died. And they didn't quite agree on the legacy. So the other guy, every night, he transported kilograms of the metal bits. Let me show you. Did I do this? Yeah, here. Those little type font bits, you know, that you have on a typing machine. He transported kilos of them down to the Hammersmith Bridge, where he dumped them, because he did not want Emery Walker to get the right to use them after his death. They've only been found in 2010 by a mudlarker. So those people that search in the mud. Now they're back at the museum. They have a little museum at the Emery Walker's house. So that's exactly what his mate would not have wanted. So I think it's funny. Now let me show you the last one. So this is Edward Johnston. Johnston was the guy that is mainly known. He's also a calligrapher, and is known for the font of the London Underground. That's him there, and this is his font. It's only been swapped in the 80s, but for many years, his font was the one used on the TFL network, really. Now let's go and see a pub for a ghost story. It is a cool pub here called the Black Lion. Now, here in the streets of Hammersmith, there was a ghost in 1803. The ghost scared everyone. It is said that there was a pregnant lady that was so scared of the ghost that she died. She lost her life. The ghost definitely existed. There are so many sightings. We know there was a ghost. Now, what was it? That we don't know. Because some of the sightings claimed that the ghost looked a bit like a guy with a bed sheet on his head. He had some shoes and everything, and sometimes he would run and kind of get the sheet trapped with his shoes. So some believed it was a ghost, some believed it might have been someone pretending to be a ghost, but one thing was certain is that there was a ghost. And eventually, after a few months, people were petrified. Ladies didn't want to go out anymore, and the streets of Hammersmith were quite quiet at night because everyone was scared of the ghost. And one night, there's a chap, after a bit of Dutch courage, he took his gun and he was gonna go and look for the ghost. So after a few pints, he took his gun. No, Ghostbusters. So he went into a little saunter on the streets of Hammersmith, and suddenly he saw the ghost right in front of him. So he went like, "Who's there? What are you? I'll shoot you." And the ghost didn't reply. The ghost was petrified. So the guy shot him. So the gunman was called Francis Smith. He shot the ghost. The ghost, unfortunately, was not a ghost. He was a bricklayer called Thomas Millwood. The bricklayers, they used to wear white at the time. Apparently, his wife told him, "You need to stop wearing white. People are gonna think you're the ghost." And one night, he was full of dust and everything. Anyway, they took his body into the pub, so into this beautiful pub, the Black Lion, and that's where he died. Some say that he then became a ghost. So that's the story. Now, the thing is, I would not have wanted to be a jury on that one, because Francis Smith, he had to be judged. You know, he killed a man, even though he believed he was doing a good thing. So I was stepping back right into a tree. Even though he believed he was helping, he was acting on mistaken belief. The jury was told there's no manslaughter here. It's guilty or not guilty. And at the time, if you were found guilty of murder, you would hang. I mean, the jury had to go for guilty. He was, wasn't he? He was guilty. He should have hanged, but he actually applied for a pardon. So George III gave him a royal pardon, so he had to do one year of penal servitude. And would you believe, because it was all over the press at the time in 1803, the actual ghost came out. It was a chap called John Graham. He had been pissed off because his apprentice was scaring his daughters, pretending to be a ghost. So he had started to dress up as a ghost to scare his apprentice. And we don't really know what happened to John, if he had a penalty himself or if he was convicted of any crimes or anything. But yeah, that's the story of the Hammersmith ghost. We had quite a similar one in Peckham. A bit later on in Victorian times, another guy that was hanging around Nunhead Cemetery and scaring people. Anyway, would you believe the question of acting on mistaken beliefs was not sorted until, I think it was in the 80s. There was a case in Woolwich, I think it was, in southeast London. There was a guy, so basically there was someone that assaulted someone, or they tried to mug someone with an old lady, and then so someone tried to do a citizen arrest. They tried to catch the man that had assaulted the lady, and then someone arrived, and they thought it was someone assaulting someone, so they attacked the other guy, the guy that was actually trying to do a citizen arrest. And that's when they had to create some legislations against or supporting acting on mistaken beliefs. So now there is a text in the law. Now, as you can see, it's quite a nice spot to enjoy the river at sunset time. So the sun should be down the other side, down here. A few hours ago at daytime, this was packed with people. And here is another aircraft. It never stops down here because we're so close to Heathrow Airport. Now, in the title of the live, you might have seen charming streets and human remains, because sadly Montague Druitt was not the only one that was found here. At the beginning of the 60s, if you've read the description of the live, you might have seen Jack the Stripper. You might have thought, oh, is that a typo? No, it's not a typo. We did have a killer called Jack the Stripper. He was a killer that acted in the 60s, and he probably even killed more than Jack the Ripper. There were potentially 10 victims, 6 for sure. Oh, thanks, Linda, for your tip. That's very much appreciated. The first victim that we certainly attributed to Jack the Stripper, that's Anna Tailford. She was 30 years old, in 1964. And there had been a couple of victims earlier. Personally, I think they're the same killer because they were also missing teeth. That seemed to be his signature, as a killer. He would, get them naked and remove their teeth or their denture. One of the victims didn't have any teeth, but he took the dentures. So he definitely had some kind of an oral obsession. Now, those ladies were sex workers, all of them. And when you read the articles from the 60s, it really shows that people or public opinion had not changed much since Victorian times, really. Because the press was not really nice with those ladies. They were like, oh, another fun girl being murdered. Like if those ladies were not mothers, sisters, cousins, wives. So you had Anna Telford, her body was found by the Hammersmith Bridge. You had Irene Lockwood, she was 26 years old. Her body was found around here on the river as well, naked, always naked. That's why he got dubbed as Jack the Stripper. Irene, she was no angel. She was a porn star as well, and she She would blackmail her customers, sex work customers. She would take some pictures with them and then she would blackmail them. So those ladies were not angels. Then you had Ellen Bartholomew, Mary Fleming, Frances Brown. Frances, I think she's the one that was linked to the Profumo scandal. She was a friend of the lady. So, you know, those ladies could have enemies, you know, but it did look like a serial killer. And the last one we know of was Bridget O'Hara. They had quite a lot in common. They were all quite short, 5 feet something. They were pretty much all of them missing teeth. They would have been removed oh, thanks for the precisions, the black sun. So yeah, they would have been, he had taken some teeth as souvenirs. And also some of them had some micro droplets of paints on their bodies. That's how the police believed it was an industrial, that the bodies had been stored for a few days or even a few weeks in an industrial place. Now, if you see that little cabin or that little hut, whatever you call it, that's for the, I don't know if you can call it the referee, but the guy that checks on the race. You know, when they do the Oxford-Cambridge boat race, they come through here. So that's to see the river and to be able to check on anyone really. Now back to Jack the Stripper. The police at the time in the 60s, honestly, they did everything they could. And although it wasn't that long ago, the system was so different. You know, when they wanted to check the cars in the area, they had to write all the plates on paper. They interviewed over 700 men that were known to be customers of sex workers. The bodies were found in different police jurisdictions. The police even suspected one of them. They thought it was one of them having a go and playing with them. Then there was a suspect. There was a chap called Monroe Island that died at his own hands. So people thought it was because he was the killer. But there was nothing against him really. And through the time of one of the murders, he would have been in Scotland anyway. The police officer that was brought in from Scotland Yard to work on the case, he was a very well-known and a very good police officer called John DeRose. DeRose was very well known because in the press they called him the 4 days inspector, because he was known to be able to solve a murder in 4 days. It was said that he had never had a case that was unresolved, which is not actually quite true. And DeRose, he was the one that suspected the acid bath murderer, a terrible killer that was dissolving his victims in acid. He had suspected him 4 years before the guy was actually caught. The first time the guy was interviewed as a suspect, DeRose was like, he's guilty. I've got nothing to prove it, but he's responsible. So a very good police officer, but they didn't find anything at the time. They spent a lot of man hours looking for cars and reports of anything suspicious. They didn't have a clue. So the case is still unresolved today. Although I'll tell you about one good suspect in a moment. For now, let me show you where William Morris used to live. The art and craft gentleman. You might know him from the wallpapers, you know, a brand that still exists today. William Morris, he would have today he'd probably be a campaigner against Temu app, because he was already at the time, you know, in Victorian times, the industry started to produce a lot of little objects that were very cheaply made, and he was a great defender of the art and craft, and that people should be proud of their work, and that we should spend more time on producing something properly rather than having it cheaply made. You love William Morris? Good. Well, some of his wallpaper was toxic. You know, they used the green arsenic thing, but that's a different story. They had no idea at the time, but there were a lot of people that died because of green dyes that they placed in the wallpapers at the time. The Victorian homes were full of killers, silent, secret killers. They had poison everywhere, those poor Victorians. No wonder why some of them got a bit mad, because we know some of those poisons are not good for their brains. Anyway, this is here, so that's the William Morris. That's where he lived. It's still the same building, and now it is a little museum. And let me show you a cool pub. There was another lady that lived around here. Again, the buildings would have been very different, but it is Catherine de Braganza. That was Charles II's wife. So bless her, she lived only a few hundred meters from her rival, Barbara Villiers. And she had met Barbara. Apparently she cried when she met Barbara. When she married the king, he already had a child with Barbara, an illegitimate, but she had no choice. At the time, the kings, they would just take mistresses, and the wife had nothing to say. Now let me show you the pub, the Dove. So that's a cool pub. It used to be a coffee house. It is said, El Gwyn, about the guy that dropped the fonts in the river? That's him. Thomas James Gordon Sanderson. So that's the guy that worked with Emery Walker, and he's the one that dumped all the font into the river. Is it buffering again? Oh, hopefully it's just because I'm in a tiny little street. Hopefully it might be better in a second. Nice. Sorry. If I start letting people go, I never go myself, so sometimes I have to go. Right, so this little ground here was not always a park. It's called Furnival Park today. It used to be, there was a building actually, the boat, like a boat school or something, and also a little Quakers graveyard. But that was bombed through the Second World War, and they never rebuilt on it. So that's very nice to have a little piece of green open space for everyone to enjoy. Now, if we see, let's see, because it's low tide, we should be able to see one of our lost rivers, the Stamford Brook. Yeah, there it is. Well, technically it would have been the Hammersmith Creek, a branch of the Stamford Brook. See, excuse my finger, but here we see a bit of a river going into the Thames. That's one of our lost rivers. It's been closed up to build the sewer and everything. So we've built over it, but it's still running underground. Does the tube run far out from here? Laurie's asking. No, the tube is like 10 minutes away from here. Hammersmith. You've got two stations. You've got the Circle line on one side, and you've got the District line on the other side. So it's quite easy to get around with the tube. On the other side of the river in Barnes, you don't have any underground. That's a bit. I mean, you have the train a bit further down, but down here you'd have to cross the river and everything to come to Hammersmith. And some people live on their boats. That's probably a lovely place to live. Anyway, to get back to Barbara and on the Queen, Catherine de Braganza. She was the Portuguese Queen. She's the one that is known for popularizing the tea over here in the UK, because being from Portugal was in charge of part of India. They had all Goa and everything. So they were already trading with a lot of tea. And because the Queen was drinking tea became fashionable. Everything the Queen does is fashionable. The Black Sun is like, how is Hyde Park? Hyde Park is cool, it's fine, it's not changed much, but it's so big. It's not my favorite of the royal parks. Now, Barbara, by the way, we tend to believe that maybe the king preferred his mistresses. Well, it's fairly obvious that he loved his wife as well, or he probably loved her to an extent. She failed to give him any children. She had a couple of miscarriages. but you know, he stuck with her. Although he had all those mistresses, he never tried to. You could at the time, I don't think it ever happened in the UK, but in some of the monarchies in Europe, you could try to ask for a divorce or an annulment of the ground of infertility. And obviously, because he knew that he had had a lot of kids with his mistresses, the problem probably came from Catherine. So he could have tried to divorce her. Did he? No. So he probably had some type of love for his wife anyway, you know. Now, to get back to our murderer, the Hammersmith nude murders, the Jack the Stripper, we never found him, but there's a criminologist, David Wilson, that did a documentary recently called Dark Sun, the Hunt for a Killer, in which he kind of highlights a very big suspect that was completely unknown to the police at the time. It is a guy called Harold Jones. He was actually a killer. He was a murderer that had killed at the age of 15 in a small Welsh village called Abertillery. That was before the Second World War. He had killed a little girl. He was a shopkeeper as a boy. Let me show you Harold. I've got a picture of him. This is Harold Jones. So he was a shopkeeper, and there's a little girl that came to his shop, and he sent her away to a warehouse, and he followed her and killed her. Now, he was suspected, he was arrested. There's actually another little girl that accused him, but he was acquitted. No one believed such a young boy, an innocent shopkeeper, could commit such horrible crime. And when he was acquitted, he killed the other little girl, the one that accused him. And he confessed, but good idea, because he confessed when he was 15. If he had been 16, he would have hanged. So he knew it was the best idea to confess. He went to prison. But with the mess of World War II, he was released. You know, with the Second World War, some people were released to go fighting. And apparently, before to leave prison, he had said he had no intention to stop. He had no intention to stop killing. Now, after the war, he moved to London, he moved to Chiswick here. He used a different name. He married the wife of a police officer, would you believe? And he had a life here in Chiswick and Hammersmith. And now some modern geoprofilers, they use those AI geoprofiling thing, and he would have lived exactly right in the right area to commit all those murders. The Hammersmith nude murder, not news. He's dead, so we cannot. I think he died of cancer. He had a daughter. The daughter, bless her, she did not know that. She didn't even know that her dad was a killer. She knew that he had changed his name, that he was using a fake name. She knew that when he was having an argument with their mum, her mum, every so often he would leave the house. He had some kind of like another little apartment he would go when. So like if he was scared to hurt her, but she had no idea, and obviously he's a good suspect, but it's all circumstantial. There's hardly any way we'd find anything now. After the documentary and all the work from David Wilson, the police did say they would they agreed to reopen the case, but we've not heard anything about it, so they probably didn't find anything. Oh, are we talking about Dante Rossetti? He was a friend of all the art and craft people that lived here, so Morris and everything. Anyway, let me show you some cool pubs down here. This is the Rutland Arms, and the second one, the Blue Anchor. It was featured in a movie. I've not seen it. You probably have. Do you remember in 1988 a movie? Right, we should be back now. Well, according to the app, we are back. So did you guys see the movie Sliding Doors? I don't know if you've heard everything, but there was a scene of the movie Sliding Doors that was shot at the pub that we've just walked past. So Gwyneth Paltrow and James Hanna, I think the other actor is, were having a drink at the pub. Now, this is the Hammersmith Bridge. It is from Joseph Bazalgette. Bazalgette, you probably heard of him in my tours before. It is the guy that created the London sewer. He was a great engineer. And this is the lowest bridge in London in terms of height. It is today only for cyclists and pedestrians. But you know what? I'll probably be running a tour in a couple of months that's back a couple of weeks later and suddenly you don't have any signal. It's hard to know. What triggers it. Anyway, guys, that's gonna be the end of the tour. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions about anything before we go. Is it buffering again now? Oh, the app is telling me it's better. We are gonna finish around here anyway, so hopefully we'll just be able to say bye. Oh, thank you, men and men. Mendon M, sorry. All right, let's see if it's any better in the back streets so we can go and say bye-bye in the back streets. Now, if any of you were completely new to me, if you want to see a bit more of me, the best way is to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Because what happens is those live streams, they're very easy to miss, and then you end up looking at the replay, which is fun as well, but it's much able to interact on everything. So make sure you subscribe, and next. So if you want to go for a nice cemetery walk with me next Friday. And Nick Nook is asking, does my profile picture offend anyone? No, Nick Nook, why would that offend anyone? I mean, I see a tiny little thumbnail, but it's there's no. I don't see any reasons to be offended. Did anyone tell you you shouldn't have? It's just, there's nothing offending, is it? It's just a UK flag on the in the country, right? Did I get my haircut? It with a razor, because I was letting it grow for 6 months now to be able to cut off all the dyed color. So now it's finally fully natural color, fully gray. The question is now, should I let it grow back again, or should I keep it as it is? I haven't decided. Oh, hold on, is there a Nazi symbol? Oh, I didn't see that. Ooh, probably. I see tiny little thumbnail, so I shouldn't say anything because I don't see it big enough to. I didn't see anything anything offensive. So yeah, next Friday, Tower Hamlets Cemetery, and the Sunday after that we'll probably go back down to Brixton. So that's something to look forward to as well. And thank you for coming today. Have a great evening or a great morning, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you on PayPal or by